highlighting history of suburban Sydney with the St Peter's Cooks River History Group.
Our aim is to preserve and promote local history.
We are based at St Peter's in Sydney's inner west.
The original inhabitants of the Arncliffe area were the Darug tribe of Aborigines. Caves along Woolli Creek provided them with temporary accommodation.
Land was granted to free settlers in proportion to their capital. Convicts whose sentences had expired were given 30 acres, with an additional 20 acres for a wife and an extra 10 acres for each child. Soldiers at the end of their service, if they remained in the colony, were given 50 acres, non-commissioned officers 100 acres.
In 1806, a land grant of 100 acres south of Cooks River was given to Sergeant William Packer of the New South Wales Corps. 3 smaller grants along Woolli Creek were made to George Fieldhouse, Mary Taylor and John Wiltshire.
These grants were acquired by Packer, who named them Hyde Park, St James Park and Kensington Gardens. His own grant, called Spriggins Grove, consisted mainly of tidal mangrove swamp.
Reuben Hannam, a convict who later became overseer of the government brickyards, was granted 100 acres adjoining Packer's land in 1825. He secured a further 60 acres each for his son David and future son-in-law Edward Flood.
In 1826, Packer's son sold 3 of his deceased father's farms to Alexander Brodie Spark, who called the estate Tempe. A small sandstone cottage was on the property. The administration was left to an overseer and 13 convict assignees. Spark enjoyed his sojourn at Tempe and began to entertain there. The cottage proved inadequate, so he commissioned John Verge to design an Arcadian villa with strong resemblances to a Greek temple, Tempe House.
A decision was made in 1839 to dam Cooks River. The dam was to provide a fresh water supply for Sydney.
In anticipation of access to the city being provided by the road across the top of the dam, a number of land sales occurred. Buyers were Spark, who purchased 2 additional areas of land, Frederick Wright Unwin and James Pike, a former sergeant in Her Majesty's 4th Regiment of Foot, whose 100 acres were south of Hannam's grant. In 1840, this was sold to William Hurst, who subdivided it into rural allotments, creating Dowling, John, Hurst and Wentworth streets. He registered the subdivision as the village of Arncliffe, named after Arncliffe in Yorkshire, near where he was born.
The dam opened in 1840. It was 50 feet wide at the base and 15 feet high, stone-faced and packed with clay. The stone came from a quarry located in today's Kendrick Park. It was the largest engineering feat so far undertaken in the colony. As a water supply, the dam proved a failure. Upstream water remained brackish, but it provided road access to the south of Cooks River.
Mitchell's new line to the Illawarra, or as it was soon called, Illawarra Road, was built in 1843 to 45. It began at Cooks River Dam, veered off to the right across swamped land behind Tempe House, then climbed more or less by a direct path to the escarpment. It was cleared by gangs of convicts and was one of the last major tasks undertaken by convict labour in New South Wales. The older bridle track, which gave access to landowners between Cooks and Georges rivers, was straightened and improved and given the name Rocky Point Road.
Thomas Kelsey secured a licence to operate an inn called the Yorkshire Man's Coat of Arms on the Illawarra Road. The inn sign displayed a fly, a flea, a magpie and a flitch of bacon. Legend has it that Kelsey said, "A fly will drink with anyone, a flea will bite anyone, a magpie will talk to anyone, and a flitch of bacon is only any good when it is hung."
The licence was sold to William Trimby and renamed the Bold Forester.
The construction of 2 new roads brought small farmers, market gardeners, timber getters, charcoal burners and shingle splitters to the area. The farmers and gardeners took up the flat land along the creeks and streams. The timber getters removed the thick covering on the ridge and its slopes.
The official road from Sydney, Cooks River Road, was managed by a road trust, who had the right to charge tolls. Throughout the 1840s, they battled toll evaders who bypassed the toll houses by using side roads. There were 3 toll houses situated at Newtown, St Peters and Cooks River Dam.
The toll for a 2-wheeled cart was 4p, and a 4-wheeled dray with 2 horses 8p. The charge trebled on a Sunday for people carrying on trade instead of going to church, a clear incentive for travellers to avoid paying if they could.
By the end of the 1840s, improved economic conditions resulted in a minor boom in Arncliffe. The area became the vegetable garden of Sydney.
In the 1850s, Hannam and Sparks' death saw a further subdivision of land. Advertisements mentioned the village of Arncliffe, presumably the collection of farmlets along Wooleye Creek on Hannam's Grant, and in proximity to William Hurst's village of Arncliffe Estate, the area now known as Torella.
By the 1860s, another road had come into being, Muddy Creek Road, today West Botany Street.
The Bold Forester was taken over by Levi and Mary Barden.
Tempe House was bought by 2 bachelor brothers, Patrick and Thomas Maguire, one described as a carpenter, the other a whitesmith, a worker in tin. They paid £2,000 for the property. Neither lived there, but over the next 25 years it was leased to a series of tenants, the most noted of these being Caroline Chisholm, known mostly for her involvement with female immigrant welfare in Australia. At Tempe, she ran an educational establishment for girls. The house was purchased by the Sisters of the Good Samaritan in 1885.
In 1867, an application was made for the establishment of a school in Arncliffe. In later years, the Arncliffe Public School site was also the location of Arncliffe Girls' Domestic Science School.
The Church of England Chronicle, March 7, 1861, stated, "A small schoolhouse has been built for the scattered population south of the Cooks River Dam."
In 1875, Stanley Howard, curate at St Peter's Church, recorded his observations of the building. "We rode to the Arncliffe Church, a remarkable edifice. Service is alternate Sundays, about 30 average attendants. The vestry is an old clothes horse done up with canvas and whitewash. Over the desk is a hole in the ceiling, from which frequently appears a large green snake, hanging down over the preacher's head. On the walls are tacked pieces of bent tin supporting patty pans to hold the candles. A very old-looking table and a few clean benches complete the ecclesiastical furniture."
In 1879, a new church building was constructed and was in use until 1972. This became known as the Old St David's when the present church was built on Forest Road.
The Illawarra Road was rutted and impassable in wet weather. An alternate route was made to link Rocky Point Road to the crest of the ridge at the top of Arncliffe Hill. This became Forest Road. The old Illawarra Road became known as Wollongong Road. Barden relocated his hotel to the new road and renamed it the Highbury Barn.
Land developers and speculators renewed their interest in the district. One of these was John McInnes, who had made money supplying gold miners with all their needs. He bought all of Packer's original 100-acre grant and most of the land on the Tempe estate. Much of this could not be built on or cultivated because of its swampy nature and tidal inundation, the exception being a small section at the rear of Tempe House, on which he erected a large 2-storied building called the Tempe Family Hotel. Alongside it he constructed another building, which he leased to William Smithson as the district's first general store. Today, Dan Murphy's occupies the site.
Local landowners approached the government to have the district granted municipal status. The municipal district of West Botany was proclaimed in 1871. An election was held. The polling booth was a disused toll house at the end of the Cooks River Dam. The results were announced. Thomas Walcott, pig farmer and boiling down proprietor, William Yates, pig and poultry farmer, and John McGuinness, publican, were elected. Yates was elected mayor.
In 1872, a single room was erected as a council chamber and office.
As the district was making progress, other problems arose. There was a proliferation of noxious industries, slaughterhouses and boiling down works, which recovered fat or tallow from animal remains to make soap and candles.
A royal commission into noxious and offensive trades stated, Mr. Doyle Chapelow's poultry farm in Arncliffe Street was described as dilapidated and not very clean, and the methods employed as primitive. His farm had the highest mortality among its poultry of any premises the Commission had seen, and the 4 boilers gave off a most offensive odour.
Mr. David Tuck's establishment nearby on the banks of Wooleye Creek stunk as bad as anything the Commission had yet seen, and was the filthiest they had ever witnessed. The chairman reported, the fumes from this place adhered to my clothes for many hours, beyond a doubt, and I brought the abominable stench with me some 10 or 12 miles back to Sydney.
Henry Nelson's premises, which contained 5 boilers, was also condemned as very dilapidated and dirty.
Henry Latham's piggery and boiling down works was described as being in such a filthy state as to be scarcely expressible, with an abominable stench produced by an accumulation of slush and dirt.
These man-made deterrents could not stay the hand of progress.
About this time, Michael and Susan Clune built the West Botany Hotel, which became the Arncliffe Hotel. Tooth purchased it in 1923. Rebuilt in 1937, it was again remodelled in the 1950s. The hotel is now accommodation known as the Airport Hotel.
From the early 1860s, railway extension throughout New South Wales had been the great political catch-cry at every election. At the 1874 election, the electors of the Municipal District of West Botany enthusiastically supported candidates who had, as part of their platform, supported a railway line through the borough. In 1881, Parliament formally approved the plans for the Illawarra Railway. The railway line opened in 1884.
The name of the district engineer for railways, T.K. Firth, is reflected in Firth Street, which runs parallel to the railway line.
After the coming of the railway, additional subdivisions took place.
Many wealthy families moved into Arncliffe. Large houses were built.
Edward Manicum Farley, a leather merchant, purchased 5 acres on Loftus Street and erected a fine 2-storey Italianate mansion called Cairnsfoot. The property remained the family home until it was bought by the New South Wales Department of Education in 1959. It became Loftus Street Special School. When Loftus Street School was incorporated with South Haven School, the name was reverted to the original property name of Cairnsfoot.
Dept on Wollongong Road was built by Frederick Gibbons, an oyster merchant and trawling magnate. In 1917, the Salvation Army purchased it to establish a children's home. It was known as the Nest from 1930 until 1969, when converted to an aged care centre. In 1971, a senior citizens complex containing self-contained units, a bed hostel, a nursing home was completed. It was renamed Macquarie Lodge. Samuel Terry, grandson of ex-convict of the same name who was known as the Botany Bay Rothschild, began to build his house, but disaster struck. He learnt the government intended to appropriate all the land he overlooked as a sewerage farm. He abandoned the work and sold it to Michael Morgan, who completed it and called it Telebar. It was sold to the Education Department in 1922 and still stands in Sedgenhoe Street behind Arncliffe School.
Gladstone and Wentworth, 2-storied semi-detached houses on Forest Road, were built by Hurstville's speculative builder Robert William Newell, with the intention of leasing them to wealthy tenants. By 1930, They were boarding houses with a living caretaker.
The Towers was built for Thomas Lawless about 1890. It was acquired by Edward William Esdale, an optical goods manufacturer and prolific photographer, in 1910.
Robert James Parish built Minterville. The Parish family sold it in 1900 to Agnes Hurd, wife of Rockdale public school teacher Andrew Hurd. It was renamed Gormanston. In 1910, the Sisters of the Teaching Order of St. Joseph purchased it for St. Joseph's Convent. In 2012, the convent was sold to the Catholic Archdiocese of Sydney to be used by St. Francis Xavier Primary School.
Athelstane was owned by W.G. Judd. The large house gave its name to the avenue it was built on and later became the site of Athelstane Public School.
Maie was built by John Horatio Clayton, founder of a legal firm. The Child Welfare Department established Maie Babies Home there in 1926. It was a home for babies and young unmarried expectant mothers. In the 1970s and 80s, it was used by the Department of Youth and Community Services as a home for secondary school-aged boys.
A post office opened in 1884. The existing building was erected in 1898.
William Thomas Willington moved into King, now Willington Street, in 1888. He had migrated from England and set up a small silversmith and electroplating business in George Street, Sydney. The diary of his voyage to Australia is in Lytham Hall archives.
The western suburbs outfall sewer was completed in 1896. Large cast iron pipes conveyed sewerage to a farm where Barton Park is now situated. The farm was in operation until the pipeline was extended to Long Bay in 1916. Justin McSweeney, involved in building the sewer project, built a modest two-storey cottage between Bonar Street and the railway line. He had an imposing three-storey wing and spared no expense with its marble floors, elegant reception rooms and ballroom. He called the mansion Kernbank. It was demolished in the 1990s.
Sections of the farm not directly used for sewerage disposal were leased to Chinese market gardeners. Chinese gardens were also situated on the western side of the railway line. Arncliffe Park was originally the property of Kim Tu. His garden was officially proclaimed a public park in 1889.
A major improvement in 1897 was the replacement of the dam. Since its construction, it had been a problem preventing effluent from the many toxic industries which lined the banks of Cook's River from reaching Botany Bay. Cook's River was regarded as the most potent source of diphtheria and typhoid fever in Sydney, and was principally known for its evil-smelling flats and swamps. The dam was cut down to below low water mark, and a wooden bridge over floodgates constructed on top of it.
Arncliffe grew in popularity. New subdivisions were snapped up by eager buyers. Small shopping centres developed.
After floods in 1901 and 2, Eastern Australia experienced the worst plague of rabbits it had ever known. George Fortescue, described as an inventive genius, patented a machine that could lay poison baits more quickly than they could be laid by hand. In 1904 he opened a new factory on the corner of Loftus and Hurst Street. Fortescue and Sons IXL rabbit poisoning machine manufacturers became Federal Machinery, specialising in the manufacture of agricultural machinery.
Arncliffe needed a hall large enough to hold public functions. In 1904, J.H. Carruthers, MLA, introduced a deputation to the Minister for Education seeking a subsidy for the building of a School of Arts in Arncliffe. No subsidy was forthcoming. In 1908, premises formerly used as a produce store was secured on the corner of Wollongong Road and Kembla Street and adapted for use as a School of Arts.
In 1909, the Arncliffe to Bexley steam tramway commenced and a fire station opened. When the fire station was relocated in 1996, the old one became a preschool.
In 1911 there were 3 hotels in Arncliffe: the Highbury Barn, the former Tempe family, renamed the Gladstone, and the Arncliffe Hotel. A vote was taken on the reduction of liquor licences in the suburb. 2 were delicensed, only the Arncliffe Hotel remained open.
The first decade of the 20th century saw the establishment of a number of churches. Presbyterian Baptist churches on Rocky Point Road, now Princes Highway, and a Wesleyan Methodist church on Wollongong Road, today St Mark's Coptic Church.
In 1911, St Francis Xavier Roman Catholic Church was erected on Forest Road. The present Catholic Church was dedicated in 1932.
Arncliffe had 2 cinemas. Both were first listed in the Sands 1912 directory. The Elite Picture Show was located at 3 to 5 Barden Street.
The Lyric Theatre was initially constructed of galvanised iron. The rear section was half-roofed for patrons who could afford higher-priced seats. It was taken over by Hoyt's Theatres and in 1939 had an Art Deco-style makeover. After closing in 1960, it was converted to an RSL. Today, a factory outlet occupies the site. Pre-World War I, a club formed by Arncliffe Presbyterian Church was called the Inverness Cricket Club. In 1920, the name was changed to Arncliffe Scots Sporting Club. The former four-square grocery chain warehouse on Borough Street was acquired in 1961 and converted to a social club known as the Arncliffe Scots Sports and Social Club.
A motorbus service started in 1921. The tram service, being a source of continual complaint for the residents of Wollongong Road, was discontinued in 1926.
A Victorian villa became Roslyn Private Hospital, which opened in the 1920s and closed in the early 1990s, now a small apartment block.
In 1926, the foundation stone was laid for a new School of Arts in Barden Street. The Coronation Elizabeth Halls opened on the site in 1955.
The Department of Education opened Wilson Road Public School in the grounds of the Salvation Army Home in 1930. The site, known as Athelstane on the corner of Wollongong Road and Dowling Street, was purchased to build a new school in 1949. 3 years later, Athelstane Public School was officially opened.
The tramway system from the city, which terminated at the Cooks River, was extended with a single line across the Cooks River Bridge, past the Tempe Hotel and behind Tempe House, to a maintenance depot between the Illawarra Railway Line and Tempe House.
A war memorial was erected there after World War I. When the depot closed, the top of the memorial was placed near the Kaima RSL and Community Club.
In 1928, Rocky Point Road between Cooks River and Cogra was renamed Princes Highway to commemorate the visit of Edward, Prince of Wales, the previous year.
In 1931, a new railway line opened from Tempe to Kingsgrove. This virtually wiped out the old village of Arncliffe, cut through the market gardens and dairies and went over the sewer outfall.
During the 1930s, soil dredged from the river was dumped on the area now known as Carl Park. It was gazetted as a reserve in 1943 and named after John Joseph Carl, MLA, who had successfully lobbied the government on the council's behalf to obtain the land.
In the post-war period, a number of large industrial enterprises operated in Arncliffe. One of these was Street's Ice Cream. Another, Fontana Films, produced the highly successful movie Jeddah. It was the last movie made by the Australian filmmaker Charles Chauvel. It is notable for being the first Australian film shot in colour and the first to star 2 Aboriginal actors in the leading roles.
Jerry Harvey and his business partner Ian Norman opened their first electrical store at Arncliffe, calling it Harvey Norman Discounts. After its success, they started a chain of Norman Ross stores. In 1965, the Arncliffe store's name was changed to Norman Ross. A shopping hours revolution started at Arncliffe in 1978 when the Norman Ross discount store defied state government regulations and opened on Saturday afternoon and Sunday. The Norman Ross sign is still visible on the wall of the old building.
Princes Highway was widened and a new bridge over Cooks River was opened in 1962.
Since the 1960s, Arncliffe has become home to many immigrants from around the world. St Mark's Coptic Orthodox Church and the Al-Zahra Mosque and College reflect the diversity of the community.
North Arncliffe was rezoned as a site for residential high-rise. The residents petitioned the council to conduct a vote to select a better name. Walleye Creek was the most popular choice. Walleye Creek Railway Station opened in 2000. Walleye Creek was officially declared a suburb in 2002.
Today, redevelopment is focused on Princes Highway. EFCO Manufacturing Company and other industrial sites have been replaced by high-rise development.
Arncliffe's 1940s public housing estate has been demolished to be replaced by 744 apartments across 3 towers. 1 tower for social housing tenants and 2 larger towers of 2-bedroom apartments for private dwellings.
If you have enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel. It's free. And check out our website, stpeterscooksriverhistory.wordpress.com. Visit us the first Saturday of every month from 1:30 to 4:30 at 187 Princes Highway, St Peters.